All right. Do it over to you.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome all to the fourth session. So before we begin, जो assessments हम send कर रहे हैं, I request everyone, those who have not completed, to complete those assessments in time. It will just help us to be on track at the back end कि सबके assessment tracking हो रहे हैं time to time. Those who have completed, thank you for proactively completing within time. सेशन 3 का जो असेसमेंट था उसमें 2 people have scored 15 on 15. One is Ankush and second is Kranti. So congratulations. सेशन उसके प्रीवियस सेशन में प्रियंका ने स्कोर किया था 15 on 15. आई थिंक लास्ट सेशन में हमने डिस्कस नहीं किया था बिकॉज ऑफ आई थिंक उस सेशन होली के टाइम हुआ था तो वी कुडंट सी बट yeah, so Priyanka is congratulations to Priyanka as well for scoring 15 on 15 in session 2.
Actually,
Okay.
before we move ahead, I just have one question. कौन है जो होली के टाइम नहीं आया था? If they were not present for some reason, last session 3 में
Uh,
कोई है?
Sachin. I am Sachin.
हाय
यस
सचिन, आप नहीं आ
सर।
पाए। इसराइल भी नहीं आ पाया था और
नवीन नवीन बात कर रहा हूँ, मैं भी नहीं आ पाया था सर
भी
एक्चुअली।
नहीं आ पाए थे। ओके, आयुषी भी नहीं आ पाई थी। तो आप लोगों ने देख लिया प्रीवियस सेशन का रिकॉर्डिंग देख लिया कि बाकी है किसी का?
नहीं
अभी
सर, रिकॉर्डिंग एक बार
हाफ
देखना बाकी है।
ओके,
अभी
नवीन।
हाफ देखा है, थोड़ा सा बाकी है अभी मेरे साइड से भी।
ओके
I have to
ओके
still see it.
Okay, Ayushi, okay. So my sincere request will be कि please catch up because some of the things remain continuous. Thanks Israel, आपने देख लिया है. Some of the things remain continuous और ऐसा हो सकता है कि आप कहीं पे चेन छूट जाए, मतलब चेन ऑफ थॉट छूट जाए या कहीं
Hmm.
पे, बिकॉज ये सेशंस वैसे ही स्ट्रक्चर किए गए हैं बेसिक्स फाउंडेशन से लेके फिर फाइनलाइजेशन, फिर बजटिंग एंड सो ऑन. तो प्लीज मेक श्योर दैट यू कंप्लीटेड. If you miss anything, you complete it before the next session.
श्योर
Okay,
सर।
thank you. Thank you.
ओके सर।
Rohit, over to you.
Yes. So today's topic is budgeting and MIS reporting, specifically for non-profits. तो आज के टॉपिक में वन थिंग आई जस्ट वांट टू क्लैरिफाई एट द बिगिनिंग itself that the the emphasis will be on how we should start thinking when we talk about budgeting, how we should approach while preparing MIS reports or internal chart of accounts. So there is no right or wrong way to create budgets or create chart of accounts within an organization. There is no one size fits all approach. हर एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन यूनिक है, उनके रिक्वायरमेंट्स और नीड्स यूनिक रहते हैं. तो we'll talk about the best practices and also about the best approach that we can think of when you introspect कि आपके ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में क्या बेस्ट रिक्वायरमेंट्स है और क्या बेस्ट फिट हो सकता है टू केटर टू दोज रिक्वायरमेंट्स. Okay, so let's begin with today's session. There are three topics that we are going to cover. One is budgeting process, second is chart of accounts, and third is small topic on cash flows. Okay, so before we begin, can somebody unmute and tell me what do you understand by the term budgeting? Budgeting क्या होता है और नॉन प्रॉफिट्स के लिए क्यों जरूरी है इतना?
Estimating.
Okay, okay. Anyone else? Why is budgeting so relevant for non-profit specifically?
Financial planning.
Okay.
For fundraising.
Perfect, perfect. Yes. So there are multiple reasons to have budgeting. So budgeting is technically a process for planning income and expenditure in advance for a specific future period. Usually हम budgeting before the year starts हम बनाते हैं. Key features are that it is heavily based on estimates and certain assumptions. Okay, हमारे जो donor proposals जो हम बनाते हैं during the year are prepared basis the budgeting activity that an organization does at the beginning of the year. So it acts as a benchmark to also compare actuals against the budgeted activities at the beginning of the year. हम जैसे budget versus actual reporting करते हैं, हम tracking करते हैं. तो एक्चुअल किसी के अगेंस्ट कंपेयर कर सकते हैं तो बजट के अगेंस्ट. These are the peculiar features of budgeting. as a best practice, budgeting should be done before the financial year begins. I've seen many organizations struggling to complete the budget even even during the mid of the month, mid of the year. Just say it goes on to like August, September, tak, but eventually they're not able to reap the true benefits of doing that entire exercise in the first place. So it's important that we start preparing budgets well ahead of time कि आप अभी नेक्स्ट ईयर का बजट है, अभी अपने ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में किसी ने स्टार्ट नहीं किया है, या दे यूजुअली दे प्लान यू प्लान टू डू बट हैव नॉट बीन एबल टू स्टार्ट. Probably this is the right time to finalize and create a budget to be presented to the to internally, so that planning can be done by the senior management well ahead of time. Okay, ordinarily, when we talk about budgets, there are two types of budgets. Does anybody know what are the two types of budgets? जैसे प्रिपरेशन हम जब भी करते हैं बजट के, देर आर सर्टन वेज टू डू दिस. देर आर कॉमनली देर आर टू टाइप्स इन विच अ बजट गेट्स प्रिपेयर्ड. अगर एग्जैक्ट नाम आपको नहीं आता रहेगा दैट इज ऑल्सो ओके, बट जस्ट ब्रॉडली कैसी तरीके से आप किस तरीके से आप बजट बना सकते हो. एनीवन, व्हाटएवर यू गाइस आर अवेयर.
Program and personal.
Okay, program. Okay, so that is types of expenses. But yeah, so budgeting जब भी हम बात करते हैं तो typically there are two types in which a budget can be created. On one is known as incremental budget, जिसमें हम previous years के amounts लेते हैं और उसमें for the future period हम adjustments करके बनाते हैं. That is called as incremental budget. And second is zero based budget, which starts with zero each time. तो अगर आपको नेक्स्ट ईयर का बजट बनाना है तो आप सारे एक्टिविटीज और प्रोग्राम्स जो नेक्स्ट ईयर के लिए प्लान्ड है उसको फ्रॉम स्क्रैच बनाएंगे विदाउट लुकिंग एट द पास्ट ईयर्स फिगर्स. ओके, दीज आर ब्रॉडली द टू टाइप्स ऑफ बजटिंग एक्टिविटी दैट हैपेंस. ऑफ कोर्स इसमें आप हाइब्रिड भी यूज कर सकते हो. जो जो प्रोग्राम्स होते आ रहे हैं उसमें आप इंक्रीमेंटल बजट का अप्रोच यूज कर सकते हो, और कोई नए प्रोग्राम्स आप लॉन्च करना चाहते हो फॉर द नेक्स्ट ईयर, you can have zero based budgeting approach in for those particular activities. So that's also perfectly fine. Okay, so when we talk about budgeting there are two main components when we talk about organizational budget. Okay, one is the program costs and second is support cost. So when we talk about program costs, ये वो costs है जो directly स्पेसिफिक प्रोजेक्ट्स और इनिशिएटिव्स के लिए हम स्पेंड करते हैं. ओके, बीट फॉर प्लानिंग और इम्प्लीमेंटेशन और मॉनिटरिंग ऑफ सर्टन प्रोग्रामेटिक एक्टिविटीज. ये जो प्रोग्राम कॉस्ट है ये हमारे ऑब्जेक्ट्स को मीट करने के लिए हम टिपिकली इनकर करते हैं. ओके, then there is other type of cost which is called as support cost. These are those costs which are required for the overall functioning of the non-profit. These are not directly tied up to the programs, लेकिन ये important होते हैं for the organization to run and indirectly for the programs also to run. Okay, good examples would be administrative cost, HR cost, accounts and finance cost, is also support cost. Okay, be it fundraising. Again, fundraising एक common cost होता है for organization to incur, जिसके benefits पूरा organization लेता है, not just one particular program. Okay, these are the two components of budgets basically. तो हमारी ये ड्यूटी होती है कि हर एक एक्सपेंस नीड्स टू बी आइडेंटिफाइड टू बी ईदर प्रोग्राम कॉस्ट और सपोर्ट कॉस्ट व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट बजटिंग प्रोसेस. ओके, हर एक एक्सपेंस इट विल ईदर गेट कैटेगराइज्ड एज प्रोग्राम कॉस्ट और सपोर्ट कॉस्ट. ओके, नाउ व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट बजटिंग प्रोसेस, इसमें एक और इम्पॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट that we all need to be aware of is how do we allocate certain costs. Cost allocation. Okay, so let's talk about cost allocation here. Now from cost allocation perspective, whatever you understand by the terminology cost allocation, can anybody share can anybody tell me what are the two types of expenses from cost allocation perspective? अगर हम किसी एक्सपेंस को अलोकेट करने की बात करते हैं और किसी एक्सपेंस को अलोकेट नहीं करने की जरूरत होती है, ओके, देर आर टू टाइप्स ऑफ no expenses where cost allocation is really required. Can anybody tell me like what do you understand by by cost allocation, and what are the two types of costs that get incurred or that needs to be classified for cost allocation cost allocation purposes?
Admin and program expense.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so when you say admin and program, yeah, I think
Hmm.
so. No, just a derivation from those. One is
Correct.
direct costs, direct expenses, and one is shared expenses. So, Ayushi, I think in your example, probably the program costs are typically direct expenses.
Direct
आप
expense.
directly एक program के लिए incur करते हो, it's a direct expense. Entire cost will get allocated to that program itself. लेकिन आप शेयर्ड एक्सपेंसेस की जब भी बात करते हो, these are attributable to multiple activities that an NGO performs. It could be for multiple programs. It could be also for some part could be for program and some part could be for admin or support cost as well. So these are the broad categories in which no expenses get classified as direct expenses or shared expenses. Again, a very important concept for all of us to be aware of before we talk about budgeting or before we start budgeting process in our organizations. ओके, तो अभी जब भी हम शेयर्ड एक्सपेंसेस की बात कर रहे हैं, जो एक्सपेंसेस जो एट्रीब्यूटेबल, दोज आर एट्रीब्यूटेबल टू मल्टीपल एक्टिविटीज दैट नॉन प्रॉफिट डज. अगर हम शेयर्ड एक्सपेंसेस की बात कर रहे हो तो देयर हैज टू बी सम काइंड ऑफ फेयर एंड रैशनल अलोकेशन मेथड, राइट, जिसके तहत हम ये कॉस्ट को, शेयर्ड कॉस्ट को डिस्ट्रीब्यूट कर सके अक्रॉस मल्टीपल प्रोग्राम्स और अक्रॉस मल्टीपल फंक्शंस, राइट. तो ये जो अलोकेशन मेथड होते हैं फॉर अलोकेटिंग शेयर्ड एक्सपेंसेस, कैन समबडी टेल मी व्हाट आर द कॉमन अलोकेशन मेथड्स दैट you might be following exist currently in your organization, or what you can think of ऐसे अलोकेशन मेथड्स जो हम यूज कर सकते हैं फॉर अलोकेटिंग कॉस्ट, कॉमन कॉस्ट और शेयर्ड कॉस्ट अक्रॉस मल्टीपल एक्टिविटीज. व्हाट विल बी द बेसिस फॉर दिस काइंड ऑफ अलोकेशन? किस तरीके से हम
Time, the ratio, like for example, if there's a employee who will be involved in more than two activities, then the ratio of time that person spends in those activities.
right, perfect, yes, time ratio is one of the methods of allocating common costs. Anybody else? Are there any other ways to allocate costs?
On percentage basis,
Okay, what percentage, like किस चीज
like
का
percentage of fund received, uh, according to that we can bifurcate the expenses.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, so somewhat yes. So typically common practices are used are, one is time ratio, कि किसी एक पर्सन ने दो प्रोग्राम्स के लिए से इक्वल टाइम स्पेंड किया है, तो दैट 1:1, देन रेशियो विल बी half half between the two programs. Then there is area ratio for certain kind of expenses. Then there could be also employee count ratio. हम इस रेशियो के बारे में थोड़ा थोड़ा बात करेंगे. And then there is program expense ratio, which is again very critical. अगर none of the other ratios work, program expense ratio is something that a non-profit can safely rely on. Okay, we'll talk about each of the ratios briefly. So time ratio तभी यूज होता है especially when it comes to allocation of salaries. Okay, suppose a non-profit is employing a program manager whose responsibilities are split across multiple programs. Okay, उनका salary है say 12 lakh rupees. So based on the timesheets that the organization or that employee fills, उसके तहत अगर if there are three activities in which that employee is spending time, say program A, program B, program C, and time spent is 50% towards program A, 30% towards program B, and 20% towards program C, then you allocate this entire annual salary across these three programs in this ratio, in the ratio in which the time is uh, captured for that employee or estimated for that employee. Okay, so you will get a breakup of the salary to be allocated to each program. सिमिलरली एरिया रेशियो जब भी हम प्रीमाइसेस की बात करते हैं, सपोज देयर इज अ कॉमन प्रीमाइसेस of the non-profit used for multiple programs and also for say admin, admin team भी वहीं पे बैठता है, programs भी उधर ही होते हैं, program A होता है, program B भी होता है, trainings होते हैं, whatever. In such case, for certain type of expenses like rent, area ratio also becomes the most prudent way of allocating such shared costs. Okay, so suppose अगर 2000 स्क्वायर फीट का ऑफिस है, 1 लाख रुपीज मंथली रेंट है, तो अगर नो इफ द एनजीओ कैन बाइफरकेट कि व्हाट एरिया इज यूज्ड बाय विच प्रोग्राम टीम्स और फॉर व्हाट प्रोग्राम्स इन द सेम प्रेमाइसेस, और वैसे अगर अलोकेट करके हम अगर एक अप्रोच, एक अप्रोच हम वी कैन फाइंड आउट इफ यू फाइंड आउट एनी अप्रोच वेयर वी कैन अलोकेट area wise bifurcation and attribute to each of the programs, then you can safely allocate those costs, rent costs, across each of the programs in the ratio of area used by each of the functions or each of the activities. Okay. Then there is also employee count ratio. जैसे कोई ऐसे expenses होते हैं जैसे staff welfare हो गया, कोई team events हो गए, एक कॉमन हेल्थ बेनिफिट्स अगर एनजीओ ने दिए हैं सारे और सारे एम्प्लॉयज़ को, तो दीज ये एक्सपेंसेस के लिए द गुड वे और द बेस्ट वे वुड बी कि जितने लोग हैं उतने काउंट के हिसाब से हम उनको अलोकेट करें. जैसे इस एग्जांपल में इफ 1,20,000 रुपीज इज स्पेंड टुवर्ड्स स्टाफ वेलफेयर एक्सपेंसेस और हमको हर एक प्रोग्राम टीम का एक ब्रॉड ब्रेकअप पता है, so we divide those expenses in that ratio, in the ratio of the number of employees in each of the functions or each of the departments. Even this is one way to look at allocating costs. Okay. अभी ऐसे situations भी आते हैं कि कोई भी तरीका, whatever we have discussed so far, time, area or employee count, it is not practically possible for a non-profit to divide cost in any of these ratios. या फिर no, that is not the best approach. If that situation arises, then one of the safest way is to allocate costs in the ratio of program expense. This is especially also applicable when it comes to support costs or administrative costs. ओके, सपोज इसे ऑडिट फी हो गया या अकाउंट्स एंड फाइनेंस टीम का एक्सपेंस हो गया, एचआर कॉस्ट हो गए, कंप्लायंस कॉस्ट हो गए, ये सारे कॉस्ट जो कॉमन कॉस्ट है फॉर द नॉन प्रॉफिट, इनको हम कैसे डिवाइड कर सकते हैं अक्रॉस द प्रोग्राम्स इज बाय लुकिंग एट द प्रोग्राम एक्सपेंस रेशियो, कि हर एक प्रोग्राम में excluding these kind of administrative or support costs, whatever is the costs, whatever the expenses for each of the programs, in that ratio we can divide such kind of administrative cost. Okay, suppose in this example जैसे हम देख रहे हैं इसमें एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव कॉस्ट है 6 लाख रुपीज, लेकिन ये एनजीओ के 3 प्रोग्राम्स है. ओके, वन इज एजुकेशन, सेकंड इज हेल्थ एंड थर्ड इज लाइवलीहुड. ओके, सपोज टोटल टोटल प्रोग्राम कॉस्ट है 60 लाख रुपीज, उसका बाइफर्केशन 30 lakhs, 20 lakhs एंड 10 lakhs है. सो द रेशियो ऑफ दीज प्रोग्राम एक्सपेंसेस विच इज स्पेसिफिक प्रोग्राम एक्सपेंस डिवाइडेड बाय द टोटल प्रोग्राम एक्सपेंस, अगर हम करते तो हमको एक परसेंटेज मिलेगा. 50% टुवर्ड्स एजुकेशन, 33% टुवर्ड्स हेल्थ एंड 17% टुवर्ड्स लाइवलीहुड. ये रेशियो जो है 50:33:17, इस रेशियो में हम ये एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव एक्सपेंसेस डिवाइड करके अलोकेट कर सकते हैं टुवर्ड्स ईच ऑफ द प्रोग्राम्स. सो हाउ वी नीड टू रीड दिस इज दैट ट्रू कॉस्ट ऑफ program for education program is not only just 30 lakh rupees which are direct expenses, but also the allocated shared expense of support cost or admin cost, which is approximately 3 lakh rupees in this case. So total cost for running program education program is 30 plus 3, which is 33 lakhs. Same way for health, 20 plus 2, 22 lakhs, and livelihood 10 plus 1, 11 lakhs. Okay, is this making sense? Is this clear? किसी को कोई questions है इसके ऊपर? Okay. So I think this is pretty straightforward. So let's move on to a case scenario now to understand this a little better. Okay. तो suppose करते हैं so I'll be using PPT and also Excel क्योंकि जो केस सिनेरियो है उसके लिए एक्सेल मैंने यूज किया है. So I'll share my Excel as well after this slide. So suppose there is an NGO called ABC Foundation. Okay, जिनके दो प्रोग्राम्स है, प्रोग्राम ए और प्रोग्राम बी. ये एनजीओ काम करता है अक्रॉस 3 लोकेशंस. ओके, एंड ईच ऑफ द प्रोग्राम इज रन इन ईच ऑफ द लोकेशन. सपोज देर आर 3 लोकेशंस, मुंबई, पुणे एंड नागपुर. हर एक लोकेशन में प्रोग्राम ए भी इम्प्लीमेंटेड है और प्रोग्राम बी भी इम्प्लीमेंटेड है. ओके, एंड देन देर आर सर्टन एक्सपेंसेस दैट आर इनकर्ड बाय एबीसी फाउंडेशन. Okay, one set of expenses are the direct expense program A expenses. Second set of expenses are direct program B expenses. Then there is third set of expenses which are program expenses but shared. Okay, shared program expenses for both program A and program B. Okay, and then there is fourth category of expense which are support costs. Again, shared support costs. Okay, so when we talk about uh, the program related cost, these are program costs, and then there is fourth category which is support cost. Okay, so I'll just quickly share the template. Yes, I hope you're able to see the screen, right? Excel. Okay. Okay, so with this example, let's see each of the expenses. Okay, so let's talk about program A first. तो प्रोग्राम ए के लिए डायरेक्ट कॉस्ट जो इस एग्जांपल में हमने लिए है, देर आर 4 टाइप्स ऑफ एक्सपेंसेस. वन इज प्रोग्राम सैलरी, देन देर इज कन्वेंस, देर इज प्रिंटिंग एंड स्टेशनरी, एंड देर इज रेंट. Suppose this is the breakup for each of the locations that we have, okay, for program A. So 19.5 towards Mumbai, Pune के लिए 15.9 and 12.4, and total expenses incurred which are direct for program A are 47.8 lakhs. Okay, this is the information that the non-profit has. Similarly, program B के लिए भी हमारे पास breakup available है. Okay, जो direct cost है program B के लिए, B को run करने के लिए across all the 3 locations, this is the breakup. So 70.7 lakhs towards program B direct expenses. Then there are program management expenses, which are again programmatic cost but shared. They are shared across both program A and program B and across all the locations. जैसे प्रोग्राम सैलरी हो गया, कोई एक एम्प्लॉय है, एक रिसोर्स है जो दोनों प्रोग्राम ओवरसी कर रहा है, दोनों प्रोग्राम्स देख रहा है, प्रोग्राम ए एंड प्रोग्राम बी अक्रॉस ऑल द लोकेशंस. उसकी सैलरी है सपोज 15 लाख रुपीज. फिर कोई एडवाइजर है हु इज एडवाइजिंग ऑन इम्प्लीमेंटेशन ऑफ प्रोग्राम्स, जिसकी जिसकी फीस है 7 लाख रुपीज. सो दिस 22 लाख रुपीज आर प्रोग्रामेटिक एक्सपेंसेस बट shared across all the locations and both the programs. Okay, and there is fourth category of expense that we saw, support cost जो है, जैसे ऑडिट फी हो गई या अकाउंटेंट की सैलरी हो गई. ओके, विच अमाउंट्स टू 9.5 लाख रुपीज. तो अगर इतना ही इंफॉर्मेशन है हमारे पास, विद दिस काइंड ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन, if we are asked to make a budget, then the budget will look something like this. Okay, प्रोग्राम ए का टोटल, प्रोग्राम बी के टोटल, प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजमेंट, प्रोग्राम मैनेजमेंट एक्सपेंसेस शेयर्ड उसका टोटल, एंड देन देर इज सपोर्ट कॉस्ट. ये सारा मिलाकर हमारा 1.5 crores का बजट है फॉर दिस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. राइट, विद दिस काइंड ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन हमको ऐसे ही एक बजट प्रिपेयर कर सकते हैं. राइट, नाउ कैन यू आइडेंटिफाई what are the shortcomings or drawbacks in such kind of budget? Can somebody unmute and share कि what do you see any
एक
drawbacks or
चीज
shortcomings?
सो दो तो एक चीज मेरे को लगी जब हम डिस्कस भी कर रहे थे तभी मुझे लग रहा था कि जो प्रोग्राम मैनेजमेंट के जो शेयर्ड वाले के हैं सो वो कहाँ पे, क्या वो फर्स्ट में भी काउंट हुए हैं, मतलब प्रोग्राम ए
हम्म
में भी काउंट हुए हैं, बी में भी काउंट हुए हैं, एंड या
राइट,
फिर सिर्फ यहाँ पे काउंट हुए हैं? तो ये एक चीज थोड़ी सी कंफ्यूजन है।
राइट, राइट, करेक्ट, करेक्ट, या और कोई ड्रॉबैक्स दिख रहे हैं? कैन एनीबडी थिंक ऑफ एनी अदर शॉर्टकमिंग्स? एनीवन? Okay, so see, if you see with this kind of approach, this is not giving true cost of running each program, like Ankush was saying. Shared cost किधर भी allocate नहीं हुआ है towards program A and program B. So it is not giving the true cost of running each program, even if I want to know. ये मुझे ये भी नहीं बता पा रहा है कि हर एक लोकेशन में कितने एक्सपेंसेस हुए हैं। प्रोग्राम ए और प्रोग्राम बी की तो सेपरेट इंफॉर्मेशन है, बट when we talk about the overall budget, there is no way in which we can find for each location what is the true cost of running each location. ओके, ये सिर्फ एक ही डायमेंशनल व्यू दे रहा है, like each of the specific programs shared multi-dimensional view. This kind of budget is not giving us so far. Plus there is something called as contingencies and reserves that an organization really requires for no for running the organization. Even those kind of reserves or contingencies have not been accounted for in this budget so far. So because of all these shortcomings, this is not really giving the true cost for running the entire organization in the first place. Okay, these are the common shortcomings if we are if we look at this kind of budgeting approach, if we follow this kind of budgeting approach. Okay, so now let's understand what is the right way or the best approach when we talk about creating a budget for an organization. ओके, ऑल आर विथ मी सो फार कि ऐसे कॉस्ट भी आते हैं कि शेयर्ड कॉस्ट, जैसे प्रोग्राम मैनेजमेंट कॉस्ट होते हैं जो मल्टीपल प्रोग्राम्स में अलोकेट हो सकते हैं, सपोर्ट कॉस्ट भी होते हैं। आर यू विथ मी सो फार? गाइस, यस, नो, इफ यू कैन जस्ट टाइप इन द चैट बॉक्स। कोई अगर किसी को क्वेश्चंस है इस हफ्ते? ओके, ओके, श्योर, श्योर। सो लेट्स लुक एट, लेट्स गो बैक टू प्रोग्राम ए फर्स्ट। ओके, तो पहले तो हमको ये समझना होगा, फर्स्ट वेन एवर वी आर creating a budget for an organization, first we need to identify the type of costs and the allocation method for each of the cost. Okay, so let's start with program A. पहले तो we have to identify for each expense what is the nature of, what is the type of cost. In this case these are direct costs. Okay, so nothing to worry, it is straightforward. Direct cost के लिए entire allocation will be towards that program itself. Okay, not complicated, straightforward. प्रोग्राम के लिए चारों एक्सपेंसेस डायरेक्ट कॉस्ट है एंड इट विल बी एंटायरली एलोकेटेड टू प्रोग्राम ए। सेम वे फॉर प्रोग्राम बी एज वेल, हमारे पास जो चार एक्सपेंसेस है ऑल आर डायरेक्ट कॉस्ट, टाइप ऑफ कॉस्ट इज डायरेक्ट एंड बिकॉज दे आर डायरेक्ट, entire cost will be allocated to program B itself. Now let's come to program management expenses. Okay, first let's understand the type of cost. These are shared costs. जैसे ही शेयर्ड कॉस्ट आता है, देयर हैज टू बी सम काइंड ऑफ मेथड इन विच वी allocate those costs across programs. Okay, अभी इस एग्जांपल में लेट्स टेक लेट्स नो इन लेट्स अज्यूम कि हमारे पास टाइम रेशियो है। इट इज अज्यूम दैट दीज टू रिसोर्सेज, वन इज एडवाइजर एंड दिस प्रोग्राम रिसोर्स, his or her time is equally divided across both program A and program B and across locations. Okay, so this cost will get bifurcated or allocated across program A and program B equally. Okay, with this approach, तो ये 22 lakhs जो हम देख रहे हैं, this will get divided across program A and program B equally. तो 11 lakhs का bifurcation हो गया. Okay, नाउ द क्वेश्चन कम्स कि प्रोग्राम ए और प्रोग्राम बी के लिए तो हमने बाइफरकेट कर दिया 11 lakhs, बट नाउ द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन इज दैट if we go back to program A, see there is 11 lakh rupees that we need to allocate to program A, right? But there are three locations also, right, in program A. And the assumption is that resources are spending equal amount of time across each of the locations. So then we divide this 11 lakh rupees equally across 3 locations. Okay. Let's not get overwhelmed by looking at these numbers. The idea is not to talk about the numbers and its accuracy. The idea is to talk about the approach that we need to focus on when we talk about shared costs. Okay. तो ये 11 लाख जो हमने जो शेयर्ड कॉस्ट में देखा जो अलोकेटेड हुआ था प्रोग्राम ए के लिए उसको हमने 3 पार्ट्स में डिवाइड किया अक्रॉस ईच ऑफ द 3 लोकेशंस. ये करने के बाद व्हेन वी टोटल अप डायरेक्ट प्रोग्राम कॉस्ट plus this shared program cost, so we will arrive at some kind of total, right? और वो टोटल का जो रेशियो रहेगा which is this, okay, this will give us location wise program A expense ratio. Okay, let's not focus on these numbers, it may just confuse you, but are you with me on the approach and the logic behind what we are trying to do here? Yes. Perfect, perfect. So this will give us some kind of ratio कि हमने program A के लिए after allocating to each of the locations, we have arrived at some kind of location wise program A expense ratio. Okay. Similarly, let's come to program B now. Again, same approach for program B. Assumption है कि equal amount of time is spent. Hence, we will divide this 11 lakh rupees across 3 locations in program B as well. ये दोनों का total up करके we will arrive at some kind of ratio, which is this in this case. And this ratio is nothing but location wise program B expense ratio. Program B का location wise का expense ratio हमको इससे मिल रहा है. Okay. So after we have allocated program cost across program A and program B, let's go to support cost now. Okay, हमारे example में हमने देखा support cost. There are 2 types of support cost. Okay, audit fees and accountant salary, amounting to 9.5 lakhs approximately. Again, same approach. Let's first identify the type of cost. ये shared costs है दोनों. अभी what is the best allocation methodology when it comes to shared support costs? Typically, we use program expense ratio when it comes to support cost का allocation across all the projects. Okay. Now, what is program ratio? हमने जो slides में भी देखा पहले, program ratio is nothing but वो specific program के total expenses divided by the total program expenses. That is how you arrive at program का expense ratio. Okay. So in this example, let's just understand how will we arrive at the program expense ratio. तो हमने जैसे देखा इधर प्रोग्राम ए और प्रोग्राम बी जो हमको ये जो टोटल दिख रहा है यहाँ पे 58.8 lakhs. See, this is the total program A cost that we have arrived after allocating shared program cost. Similarly, for program B, we have arrived at 81.7 lakhs for program B. Okay, यही ratio जो है, when we calculate this ratio, we will arrive at the program expense ratio. 58.8 lakhs divided by 81.7 lakhs, we will get ratio of 42 is to 58. This is how you will arrive at the expense ratio in which support cost will get further bifurcated. Okay, all are with me? Any questions? किसी को कोई questions है इसके ऊपर? You can just unmute yourself or you can just type okay. If you are with me, just type yes. Okay. Perfect. Perfect. Thanks. Yes. Okay, so this is how we arrive at program expense ratio. So once we have arrived at program expense ratio, then the job is to again divide these support cost in that ratio. Okay, so in this example, 9.5 lakh rupees needs to be divided across program A and program B into 42 is to 58 का ratio. तो जो भी amount आता है, that is how we divide. Now the question comes, okay, program A का allocation है 3.97 lakhs and program B का है 5.52 lakhs. Now how do we allocate this across the three locations in each of the program? Okay, now let's go to program A. The question is, ये जो 3.97 lakhs है, how do we allocate across program A first in each of the locations? So same approach like we did
Ratios.
earlier. This 3.97 lakhs will get divided across each of the locations in the location wise expense ratio जो हमने पहले ऊपर find out किया था in this row. In row number 15, if we see this ratio that we had arrived, ये ratio में हम इसको bifurcate करेंगे across three locations. Okay, and then we will arrive at the total program A cost, which is here 62.77 lakh rupees. Similarly for program B as well. Okay, it will be the same approach. 5 point जो हमारा हमने support cost का जो allocated portion था will get divided across three locations in the ratio of location wise program B expense, and that's how we will arrive at the total cost for running program B
I have a
location wise.
question. May I interrupt? Sorry.
Yes, please.
You did ask us not to notice the numbers, but should I'll tell you the cell number. E10 cell is 7,50,000 program salary. Should that not match with E3? Like program
Sorry,
salary total should be the same, right? Or is it different?
which cell? E14. Which cell are you talking about?
E10 and E3 should be the same, right? No?
E10, which is 7.5 lakhs, and
And
E3.
E3. Total program salary should be the same, right?
No, no. So see, okay. So this program salary, if you are referring to E10, this has come from the common
Management
program
expenses.
management expenses.
Okay.
And
Fine. Got it.
this row is direct program
Direct
salary for
expenses.
program B.
Okay, fine. Okay, got it. Yeah. And just to check if I've understood properly, so you did the area-wise allocation for the direct expenses, right?
See, direct expenses के लिए there are no allocation. Direct expenses are directly towards program A and program B.
So allocation is only for the program management and support costs.
Correct. Those costs which are shared across multiple programs and locations,
Correct.
that
Got
is where
it.
we need to
Yes.
allocate.
Yeah, I think because they were on the same sheet, I think I got confused. Yeah, got it now. Yeah, thanks.
Sure. Sure. So once we have allocated support costs as well across two programs, then now let's go to our budget summary. Okay. So now, because we have allocated the shared cost across all the programs and across all the locations, हमारा budget summary will look something like this. Okay, we will have breakup location wise as well and not just at the program level. Okay. Okay, so now this is giving us multi-dimensional view of the budget. अगर हमको location wise totals देखने हैं तो इस sheet में we will be able to look at location wise, what it requires for the location to run. What is the true cost of running the location? Okay, for the organization. So this is the total. These are the totals that you get for location wise. And if we have to look at each of the two programs, then we have to just go to this sheet for each of the programs, and you will get the total for running each of the programs as well. What are the total cost of running each of the programs? So this kind of approach gives us multi-dimensional view of the same budget that we looked at previously. Okay, then there are. Okay, all are with me so far. Any questions? किसी को कोई doubt है? Yes, Kusum, we'll be sharing this budget sheet as well as the entire PPT as well after the session. Okay, किसी का doubt है? Okay, so when we talk about budget for an organization, it is not just the direct and shared cost, but also something called as contingency and reserves. Okay, तो contingency basically ये होते हैं कि जो अगर कोई टेम्पररी हमको फंडिंग रिक्वायरमेंट है, इफ देर आर सर्टन डिलेज इन रिसीविंग फंडिंग फ्रॉम अ डोनर or release of tranches, the organization cannot stop working, right? There has to be some kind of contingency that needs to be built in. So typically for running an organization, it is important that we provision for such kind of contingency in the budget itself at the beginning. Okay, suppose there is, so in this example, we can, like 5% contingency of the total budget, we have kept as contingency. In fact, there are certain organizations who ask for contingency from the donors as well. And some donors also willing to give such kind of contingency in the budget itself. I know it's not a normal practice, but practically it does happen. It's, as long as you are able to communicate and build a narrative before the donors and really pitch for such kind of contingencies, though even some of the donors are willing to provide for such contingencies. कंटिजेंसी का एक ही रहता है कि अगर टुवर्ड्स द एंड ऑफ द अग्रीमेंट पीरियड, बजट पीरियड, इफ यू आर नॉट एबल टू यूज दैट मनी, then you will have to ask for some kind of reallocations, or probably inform the donor before you spend that money from contingency. Okay, that is the only condition that needs to be taken care of when it comes to contingencies. Okay, and another form is reserves. Reserves वो होते हैं जो हम accumulate करते हैं from our past surplus or earnings, which are unrestricted in nature, and which we through which we can build long term like emergency funds or some kind of sustainability funds. So contingencies are to meet short term requirements, whereas reserves are typically for long term requirements of the organization. Only when we account for these two as well in the budget, that is when we can truly say that this is my true cost of running the organization for a financial year. So it is not just 1.5 crores, which only comprised of direct and shared expenses, but also contingencies and reserves, which needs to be taken care of at the beginning itself when we prepare budget. Okay. किसी के कोई क्वेश्चंस डाउट्स है अब तक?
Yeah, so can you repeat about contingency reserve, how we differentiate between both?
Yes. So yeah, I'll just get back to the PPT. Yeah, so when we talk about donor budgets, okay, just give me one moment. Yes. So when we talk about, budgeting, when we talk about organizational budgeting, it's not just program cost and support cost that we talk about. We also should consider contingency cost and reserves. Okay. Contingency cost is that kind of money which is set aside to handle unexpected expenses or emergencies that are short term in nature. जैसे अगर किसी डोनर ने ट्रांस नहीं दिया, अप्रैल में कमिट किया था लेकिन आते आते जून हो गया, so in that period how do you meet those costs? Okay, then probably you typically use your some kind of contingencies that from some kind of from other donors, or maybe you will have to deep dive. If there are no contingencies, then you will have to deep dive into your reserves. So contingencies are those costs जो short term nature के लिए अगर donor fill in कर सकता है, अगर to so that organization can run in the short term, these are contingency cost. Whereas reserves are like long term savings, which you carry forward over the years through your past unrestricted surpluses. जैसे कोई अगर इकोनॉमिक डाउनटर्न आ गया या फंड रेजिंग नहीं हो पाया एक साल तक, then how will the organization really run, right? So in those situations, organizations can rely on their reserves which have been carried forward over the years. जैसे एक एग्जांपल होता है कॉर्पस फंड, जो हमने लास्ट सेशन में बात की थी. इवन कॉर्पस फंड इज सम काइंड ऑफ a fund that can be used in terms of emergencies, not in the day to day functioning, but जब भी वो difficult day आ जाता है, that time you can dip in your corpus. Even that is one kind of, you can say, reserves that an organization can build. And also there are unrestricted reserves which we spoke about in the previous sessions as well. Yes, Ankush.
तो दोहित, एक मेरे को जो सवाल आ रहा था वो ये था कि जैसे अगर हम बात करें कंटिजेंसी कॉस्ट की या रिजर्व्स की बात करें, तो वो क्या वो फिक्स्ड हमेशा, मतलब एक ही परसेंटेज, जैसे 5% आपने मेंशन किया था एग्जांपल में, क्या वो ऐसा ही कुछ परसेंटेज फिक्स होना चाहिए ईयर ऑन ईयर, या फिर ये पहला ये एक
Yeah,
सवाल है। दूसरा सवाल ये है कि जैसे अगर अगर फॉर एग्जांपल एक साल में वो यूज नहीं होता है, तो नेक्स्ट ईयर भी क्या सिमिलर वो वही जो अमाउंट रही है वही कैरी फॉरवर्ड करके, या फिर हम उसमें कुछ और भी ऐड करके, बिकॉज बजट ऑब्वियसली इंक्रीज होगा, तो कुछ और अमाउंट बनती रहेगी। सो क्या ऐसे ही ये ईयर ऑन ईयर ग्रोथ भी करती रहती है कंटीजेंसी कॉस्ट और रिजर्व्स की?
yeah, yeah. See, yeah, so first, to answer your first question, yes, एक specific percentage आपको arrive करना पड़ेगा, and that is how you will build in those kind of cost in your budget in the first place. Okay, this is just one approach. You can also arrive at some kind of fixed amount if you would like, like say 25 lakh rupees example I'm just giving, or 10 lakh rupees you want to build as contingency, or you do build as reserves every year. Even that is another approach to do that, but typically percentage of the total budget is a better approach. uh, and second is that, see, contingency costs जो होते हैं, that uh, some donors also fund us, provided we use it before the end of the agreement period. Okay, तो कंटिजेंसी फंड यूजुअली कैरी फॉरवर्ड नहीं होते year on year, unless the donor is giving unrestricted kind of contingency funds. Yes, Ravi, you want to probably,
Yeah,
Ravi.
so I can add a little bit context here also to it. Ki, Ankush, contingency is generally also dependent the on the life cycle of the program or the nature of the program that you're doing, right? So the percentage can vary. For example, if you're an organization that has just started and doing pilot programs, naturally your even if another organization is doing the same program, right, doesn't necessarily mean that your contingency has to match their contingency percentage. Because as a new organization, you are still learning. You have a lot of unknowns. Contingency, what is not known is unknown, right? उसका आप सिर्फ एक estimate लगा सकते हो. That can never be a fixed. The point that it is an estimate itself is the thing. So as you progress, you'll realize, okay, we have started accounting for everything. We know more or less everything is settled. So your percentage will decrease. The same thing can vary from geography to geography. If you're in one geography doing something for many years, great. Your contingency will be low. Supposing suddenly you start going in another geography, the same contingency may not work because you don't know उस geography में क्या नए challenges आएंगे. So you will increase the contingency even if it's the same program. So it's a very subjective call you need to take each year what that contingency will look like. Does this help? I think Ankush has frozen. But yeah, like Dohit, this is what I wanted to
Yeah,
add.
yeah, sure. Yeah, so only when we account for all these components of budgeting, that is when we will arrive at the true cost of running a non-profit. And it's not just about just direct program cost and the admin cost that we usually talk about, but it also this entirety we need to look at when you talk about organization's budget. किसी और के कोई क्वेश्चंस है इस
I think I
टॉपिक के
lost
ऊपर?
you, Ravi. There was some internet connection problem there.
Yeah, Ankush, so could you hear Ravi's
No, no, no,
response?
no. Just I think सब कुछ pause हो गया था. I'm not able to hear कि रवि ने क्या लास्ट में बोला ना.
Yeah, so I think let's complete this. Ankush, I'll come back.
Yeah,
Basically,
yeah, great.
bottom line
हाँ.
is that it's a variable amount each year. It can change based on risk of the program, based on risk of the organization, based on risk of the geography. Yeah, so we can touch base upon it later again. I think, Dohit, you can continue.
ठीक है. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. So anyway, इसके बाद एक हमारा short break था for 5 minutes before we begin the new topic. Okay, so this completes the first topic on budgeting. Okay, so we'll just take a 5 minutes break. Probably we can just regroup at 15-20.
Thank you,
Yes.
Ravi.
Okay. So we'll take up the second topic for today, which is chart of accounts and MIS reporting process. When we say MIS reporting, we'll focus on budget versus actuals today, because that is related to the chart of accounts. That is also one of the key factors, when it comes to non-profits accounting. Okay. So can somebody is unmute and share what do you understand by the word chart of accounts, by the term chart of accounts? हम अकाउंटेंट्स काफी इसके ऊपर काम करते हैं, नोइंगली और अननोइंगली. किसी को किसी को कुछ आइडिया है व्हाट इज दिस चार्ट ऑफ अकाउंट्स एग्जैक्टली?
Is it grouping of accounts, ledger accounts under different groups?
Yes, yeah. So yes, kind of, yeah. So no, so structured, basically chart of account is nothing but structured list of all the accounts used by non-profit. Like you are right कि ledger account जो हम बनाते हैं, जो groupings करते हैं under specific expenses, under some kind of groupings that we do when we create those ledgers in our tallies or whatever accounting software that we are using. That is basically known as chart of accounts. Now, this forms the backbone of bookkeeping because every transaction will get recorded in the defined chart of accounts that we do at the beginning of starting the recording of transaction in our systems. Okay, तो इट फॉर्म्स द बैकबोन, क्योंकि अगर चार्ट ऑफ अकाउंट्स अगर हमारे सही नहीं है तो इवेंचुअली हमारे रिपोर्ट्स भी सही नहीं निकलेंगे. ओके, इन सिंपल सिंपल वर्ड्स. So proper chart of accounts is important to enable us to give clear kind of reporting, be it management reports or donor specific utilization reports, or even the balance sheet income and expenditure that we prepared for regulators. Even that is somewhere coming out from the chart of accounts that we use for recording each of the transactions in the first place. So in today's session, we will be discussing about expense related chart of accounts, because that is where the entire the game and the focus is very critical from a non-profit perspective. Or both, and how will that translate to budget versus actuals reporting and tracking? We'll talk about that aspect as well. Okay. Now some questions to ask before we start creating chart of accounts. Okay, ये तभी होता है typically जब भी हम organization start करते हैं, when we start our maintaining our books of accounts. एक तो डिफॉल्ट लेजर्स जो रहते हैं वो तो रहते ही है अकाउंटिंग सॉफ्ट सिस्टम में, लेकिन हम बहुत सारे लेजर्स कस्टमाइज भी कर सकते हैं बेस्ड ऑन आवर रिक्वायरमेंट. सो फर्स्ट इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट दैट all the whatever information is required for an organization to capture is something that is defining how do we prepare the chart of accounts in the first place. Okay, then important aspect is that कि जो भी हम chart of accounts बनाते हैं it should align with the expense budget as well that we prepare. तो एक होता है ऑर्गेनाइजेशन बजट जो हम बनाते हैं, समवेयर अवर चार्ट ऑफ अकाउंट्स इन अवर अकाउंटिंग सॉफ्टवेयर जहाँ पे एक्चुअल्स रिकॉर्ड होंगे, एक्चुअल एक्सपेंसेस रिकॉर्ड होंगे. दैट शुड ऑल्सो अलाइन विद द बजटिंग एक्टिविटी दैट वी आर डूइंग at the beginning of the organization, at the beginning of the year. Okay. Again, this also, so there is one more question that we need to check internally is that how does the senior management or the leadership wants to look at the NGOs data for reporting purposes. Even that will determine the structure of the start of accounts that we will prepare. And then there are various parameters that needs to be taken care of. जैसे हमने अभी एग्जाम्पल में डिस्कस देखा कि 2 प्रोग्राम्स थे, 3 लोकेशंस थे, right? Then there were types of expenses. So what all are the parameters that are non-profit, that are relevant for the non-profits functioning that needs to be recorded in our books of accounts? Okay, the parameters could be program, location. हमको डोनर वाइज भी तो डेटा कैप्चर करना है बिकॉज रिपोर्ट्स देने हैं एंड में डोनर को, राइट? सो देयर इज डोनर नेम दैट नीड्स टू बी कैप्चर्ड इन एट द टाइम ऑफ रिकॉर्डिंग ट्रांजैक्शन इटसेल्फ. कभी कभी डोनर के लाइन आइटम्स अलग होते हैं हमारे बजट से. So how do we capture donor line items also in the accounting system? I mean, these are all the parameters that needs to be looked at before we create customized chart of accounts for a non-profit. Okay. So with this background, let's understand कि हम ये जो chart of accounts या फिर जो ledgers जो बनाते हैं in for non-profits, how should we make it unique by using some kind of coding technique uh, that NGOs can use so that all these parameters and all this data gets captured at the point of at the source itself. Okay, we'll discuss about this in detail with an example as well. Okay, so now let's understand first what are the broad steps that we need to follow. Okay, so when we have to create expense chart of account, first step is to identify reporting parameters. हमको किस तरीके से डेटा कैप्चर करना है इन द फर्स्ट प्लेस. ओके, एग्जांपल हो गया जैसे हमने बात की अभी, प्रोग्राम नेम, लोकेशन वाइज हमको डेटा चाहिए, ग्रुप ऑफ एक्सपेंस वाइज डेटा चाहिए हमारे अकाउंटिंग सॉफ्टवेयर में कैप्चर होने के, डोनर नेम वाइज, डोनर लाइन आइटम वाइज. दीज आर ऑल द पैरामीटर्स. फर्स्ट, you as an organization will have to identify which all parameters are relevant for you that needs to be captured in the chart of accounts. Okay, then second step is assigning unique code to each of the parameters so that that code can be used to identify that particular expense relates to which parameter that the organization wants to capture data on. Okay, so each unique code, each parameter will have some kind of unique code. Okay, when we talk about unique code, it could be either abbreviation of program name, example, or abbreviation of location name, या फिर आप कोई नंबरिंग भी दे सकते हो for each of the locations that the organization is working in, each of the programs that the organization is running in. Then there are various ways to do it. Whatever you do needs to be unique, okay, for each of the parameters identified. And then the third step is creating a unique ledger account code. Okay, so when we talk about ledger account code, यूजुअली बाय डिफॉल्ट हमारे अकाउंटिंग सिस्टम में लेजर्स रहते हैं, लाइक हम जो क्रिएट करते हैं इज लाइक ट्रैवल एक्सपेंस, रेंट एक्सपेंस, कन्वेंस, प्रिंटिंग एंड स्टेशनरी एंड सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ. But when you're creating specific non-profit chart of accounts and where you want to capture certain parameters that we just discussed, like program name हो गया या location name हो गया, then that expense ledger will have to be uniquely coded in a way where something like this. I mean, this is just one approach that we can use. Like the ledger, first part of the ledger should determine which program this expense relates to. Second part, to which program this expense relates to, and the third part could be the actual expense. Okay, we will talk about this with an example. I'll just share the Excel template that we have. Okay, so let's look at coding of expense ledgers. Okay, जो हमने अभी एग्जांपल देखा है एबीसी फाउंडेशन का, उसी एग्जांपल को कंटिन्यू करके एंड लेट्स जस्ट सी हाउ वी कैन बेस्ट डिफाइन द स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ ऑल द लेजर्स, एक्सपेंस लेजर्स. ओके, तो जैसे हमने देखा इधर दो प्रोग्राम थे, राइट, प्रोग्राम ए एंड प्रोग्राम बी. So we can assign the codes for each of the programs as, say, PA stands for program A, PB stands for program B. Alternatively हम उसको अलग नंबरिंग भी दे सकते हैं, जैसे P001 could be for program A, P002 could be for program B, and कल जाकर अगर program C होता है, so it could be P003 and so on and so forth. Okay, in this example we are taking PA and PB as the codes. फिर जो प्रोग्राम मैनेजमेंट एक्सपेंस जो हमने देखा था, शेयर्ड प्रोग्राम एक्सपेंसेस, उसको हम कोड देंगे PME. ओके, प्रोग्राम मैनेजमेंट एक्सपेंस. फिर सपोर्ट कॉस्ट थे, उसको हम कोड देंगे SC, सपोर्ट कॉस्ट. So these are the parameters basically. Program expenses are the parameters that have been identified in this example, जिसका इंफॉर्मेशन हमको चाहिए कि कैप्चर हो जाए एट द टाइम ऑफ बुकिंग ऑफ एक्सपेंस इन आवर बुक्स. ओके, सिमिलरली जो तीन लोकेशन आइडेंटिफाई हुए थे, मुंबई, पुणे एंड नागपुर, वी कैन नेम इट एज MUM, PUN एंड NAG. Alternatively, again, you can also name it as L, location 01, location 02, location 03, and so on, if you want. Okay. Okay, so once we have defined a ledger name
तो
something
ये
like this.
सॉरी,
Yes.
स्क्रीन थोड़ा प्लीज बड़ा करेंगे.
Okay. Is this better?
यस यस, थैंक यू.
Yeah. सो हर एक लेजर का नेम हम इसको एक यूनिक कोड इस तरीके से दे सकते हैं, जैसे प्रोग्राम नेम अंडरस्कोर लोकेशन नेम अंडरस्कोर एक्सपेंस नेम. इफ यू आर फॉलोइंग, if you are identified this kind of structure to be followed for each of the expense ledgers, then each of our expense ledgers that we create in our accounting software should be named in this unique way. Okay, so let's look at program A expenses. Okay, जो हमने 4 expenses identify किए थे across Mumbai, Pune, Nagpur. How will the ledgers typically look like? Okay, so this is how our ledgers will have to be prepared, created in the accounting software. Okay, so PA stands for program A, underscore MUM stands for Mumbai location, underscore program salary is the nature of expense. So suppose हम मुझे अगर program salary for Pune record करनी है towards program A, I will select PA underscore PUN underscore program salary as the ledger for booking salaries pertaining to program A, Pune location. Similarly, printing and stationery का expense हो रहा है मुंबई location के लिए towards program A, I will select this ledger. Similarly, when I have to book rent for Nagpur location for program A, I will select this ledger. This is how at the time of source itself, at the time of data capturing in our accounting software, we will be capturing the data in the right place. So that subsequently हमारे reports भी वैसे हम generate कर सकते हैं. We will see the reporting part as well. Okay. Similarly, program B के लिए भी we will create certain ledgers in our accounting software. Say, similarly, it will be everything will remain same. Everything the program will change. Program name will change. Here it will be PB underscore MUM underscore program salary. Similarly, PB underscore Pune PUN, and here PB underscore NAG. Okay. देन द क्वेश्चन कम्स कि पीएमई जो हमारे प्रोग्राम मैनेजमेंट एक्सपेंसेस जो हमने देखे थे जिसको हमने कोड दिया है पीएमई. If you have to capture expenses pertaining to program management expenses, then we will record it in these specific ledgers. We'll have to create these ledgers first. Program management expenses incurred at Pune or Nagpur or Mumbai, and same way for support costs. Okay, there are certain support costs that gets incurred, audit fee, accountant salary. अभी यहाँ पे क्वेश्चन आएगा कि समटाइम्स एट द टाइम ऑफ बुकिंग एक्सपेंस हमको नहीं पता होता है कि ये कौन से लोकेशन के लिए, या फिर जो शेयर्ड कॉस्ट होते हैं स्पेसिफिकली वी विल हैव टू वी मे नॉट नो एट द बिगनिंग इटसेल्फ एट द टाइम ऑफ बुकिंग कि इसको किस रेशियो में अलोकेट करना है या फिर कौन से प्रोग्राम में जाएगा एंड सो ऑन सो फोर्थ, राइट. So in this case, what is due to such kind of operational challenges, what we can do is that we can park these kind of common expenses under, say, so instead of support cost Mumbai, we can just park it as support cost underscore HO. HO stands for head office here. Okay, you can name it whatever you want. I'm just taking this example where head office stands for the central location from which the organization runs. So audit fees are central cost, so you can book those such kind of audit fees in SC underscore HO underscore audit fees के ledger में जाके. Similarly, accountant salary हो गए. Again, that accountant is just one accountant for the entire organization. He or she sits at the central office. So you can park this accountant salary in this kind of ledger, SC underscore HO underscore accountant salary. Okay, so that at the time of booking, you are booking it in the right program head and under the right expense nature of expense. Subsequently, जब भी आप reports बनाते हो, where you have to allocate such kind of common costs or support cost across multiple locations and multiple programs, वो आपको फिर Excel में वो आपको divide करना पड़ेगा. At the time of booking, you can just book it in one common ledger itself. ओके और जिस कोई एक्सपेंसेस आपको अगर पता है कि ये इक्वली डिवाइड होना है, जैसे एग्जांपल प्रोग्राम मैनेजमेंट एक्सपेंसेस हो गए, आपको पता है ये एडवाइजर फीस हर एक लोकेशन के लिए अलग अलग ही रिकॉर्ड करनी है. सो यू कैन जस्ट बुक इट इक्वली एट द टाइम ऑफ बुकिंग इटसेल्फ, और एल्स ऑल्टरनेटिवली यू कैन जस्ट पार्क इट इन वन लेजर PME underscore HO and then bifurcate later on when you have to create certain kind of reports for the for the certain kind of management reports internally. Is this clear? इसके ऊपर किसी को कोई questions है? Anybody has any questions? किसी को कोई doubts है अब तक जो हमने डिस्कस किया है? Yes, no, can you just type it in the chat box whether if you're following, just type yes. If you're not following, just type no.
Yes, understood.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Perfect. तो जब भी ये हमारे जैसे लेजर कोड्स बन गए, इसका अभी कहाँ पे फायदा होगा ना? लेट्स लुक एट इट फ्रॉम नाउ. हाउ विल दिस काइंड ऑफ वंस द डेटा इज गेटिंग कैप्चर्ड इन ईच ऑफ दिस लेजर्स, how will this be useful when we talk about certain reports like budget versus actuals? Okay. तो क्योंकि हमारे पास हमने जैसे बजटिंग एक्टिविटी की, तो हर एक प्रोग्राम, हर एक लोकेशन और हर एक एक्सपेंस के अगेंस्ट हमको एक बजट कंपोनेंट मिला था, राइट? सो ओके, सो वी हैव द बजटेड नंबर्स फॉर each of the location, each of the programs, and each of the expense. Now, because we are also capturing the actuals in our accounting software in the similar way, we will be getting actuals against each of the budgeted numbers, capturing each of the parameters that we just discussed. Okay, क्योंकि हम डेटा ही वैसे कैप्चर कर रहे हैं एट द टाइम ऑफ बुकिंग एंड एक्सपेंस, प्रोग्राम लेवल पे, लोकेशन लेवल पे और एक्सपेंस लेवल पे, हमको actuals, so if you see column D and column F, which is highlighted in green, okay, the D column will be the ledger names which will be unique for each of the expense in your accounting software, and जिसके अगेंस्ट F column जो actual जो हम बुक कर रहे हैं उसका भी हमको फिगर्स मिल जाएंगे from that accounting software. So if we plot these budget and actual numbers, we can easily get this budget versus actual reports that can be generated from the accounting software itself. Okay, by just exporting in Tally and using VLOOKUP. So you can do variance analysis also through by preparing such kind of reports. But ये reports तभी possible है जब भी आप आपके चार्ट ऑफ अकाउंट्स अलाइन करेंगे आपके बजट से. Okay, the idea of this discussion is that to talk about the various possibilities that are there if we are capturing the data in the right way in our existing accounting system itself. Is this clear? Is this making sense? कोई questions है किसको? Okay, once we have this kind of data, then it is just using pivot tables, right? Pivot tables, you can just look at any permutation combination. जैसे program level पे आप budget versus actuals देख सकते हो. आपको अगर लोकेशन प्रोग्राम लेवल फॉर ईच ऑफ द लोकेशन देखना है तो वैसे देख सकते हो. No, if you just want to see location wise and then at the expense level, even that is possible. So I mean, various permutation combinations, you can just play around with the data subsequently. The important point here is that it is important that we capture the data correctly in the first place. अगर आप चार्ट ऑफ अकाउंट्स आपके ओपन एंडेड रख रहे हो, जैसे कॉमन रख रहे हो, रेंट, ट्रैवल, कन्वेंस, एग्जाम्पल, विदाउट कैप्चरिंग program name, without capturing location, then it will become extremely difficult to generate reports directly from, by just exporting from Tally and using VLOOKUP. फिर आपको पूरा rework करना पड़ेगा. After you export, you have to go and identify, or else आपको parallelly अलग से maintain करना पड़ेगा वो सब data Excel पे, which is not the efficient way of handling no the accounting data. So if you're the idea is that अगर आप चार्ट ऑफ अकाउंट्स आपके क्लीन और यूनिक रखते हो तो काफी एफिशिएंसीज आप बिल्ड कर सकते हो. ओके, तो अभी हमने बात की प्रोग्राम्स, लोकेशंस और एक्सपेंस, नेचर ऑफ एक्सपेंस, टाइप्स ऑफ एक्सपेंस की, राइट? नो, देयर इज वन मोर एस्पेक्ट टू दिस. व्हाट इफ यू वांट टू लुक एट डोनर लेवल पे, वो डोनर के कितने एक्सपेंसेस है, कितने नो या विच ऑल which all location is funded by each of the donors or which all program is funded by each of the donors, whether even that is possible or not. Okay, that is where this cost category and cost center comes into picture. Okay, so if you in addition to program name, location name, even if you want to capture donor data as well, कि कौन से डोनर ने कौन सा एक्सपेंस फंड किया है और हमने जो स्पेंड किया है, और अगर डोनर के बजट में भी अलग लाइन आइटम्स है विच आर नॉट अलाइनिंग विथ organization's budget line items, even that can be somewhere structured by using cost categories and cost centers. Okay, we'll just briefly discuss about these two features as well. Okay, so suppose you are using cost category as cost as donor name in Tally, and cost centers as donor specific line items, okay, which may be different than non-profit expense ledgers. Example, अगर हम प्रोग्राम सैलरी यूज कर रहे हैं तो डोनर के बजट में शायद वो पर्सनल कॉस्ट की तरह दिखेगा, आपको दिख सकता है। ओके, तो आपको जब भी रिपोर्टिंग करना है डोनर को, यू विल स्टिल हैव टू रिपोर्ट इट एज पर्सनल कॉस्ट एंड नॉट प्रोग्राम सैलरी। ओके, देन इफ वी आर रिपोर्टिंग एज कन्वेंस, डोनर में हैव लाइन आइटम नेम्ड एज ट्रैवल एंड स्टे। हमारे लिए रेंट और प्रिंटिंग एंड स्टेशनरी हो, डोनर के लिए एक ही एक ग्रुप हो, सेंटर प्रीमाइस एक्सपेंस एग्जाम्पल। ओके, ऐसे भी डिफरेंशिएट, ऐसे भी अलग 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 इश्यूज आ सकते हैं व्हेन इट कम्स टू कैप्चरिंग expenses at the donor level. So if we are using our cost categories and cost centers effectively, even this can be taken care of in Tally itself. Okay, so suppose this is just an example taken from from Tally. So if you look here, okay, यहाँ पे एक्सपेंस बुक किया है 1,25,000 रुपीज का। ओके, एक्सपेंस अकाउंट डेबिट टू द नेम ऑफ द पर्सन, द लैंडलॉर्ड एंड टीडीएस। ओके, नाउ व्हेन यू बुक एक्सपेंस 1,25,000, वी हैव आल्सो कैप्चर्ड द डोनर नेम हियर विच इज सिप्ला फाउंडेशन, विच इज अ कॉस्ट कैटेगरी। और वो सिप्ला फाउंडेशन के जो बजट लाइन आइटम है उसमें रेंट ब्रैकेट में अकोमोडेशन, दैट्स हाउ, दैट इज व्हाट द डोनर लाइन आइटम सेज। So because at the time of capturing, at the time of booking rent expense, we have rightly captured Cipla Foundation as cost category and rent accommodation as cost center. आप जब भी कॉस्ट कैटेगरी और कॉस्ट सेंटर के रिपोर्ट निकालते हो तो आपको सिप्ला फाउंडेशन का पूरा फॉर द एंटायर पीरियड यू विल गेट टू नो what was the total amount received and how you have spent that money for that donor across each of the line items that the donor has funded as per donor, you see. So आपका जो डोनर ट्रैकिंग और डोनर यूटिलाइजेशन ट्रैकिंग जो हम बोलते हैं ना, डोनर यूटिलाइजेशन रिपोर्ट्स जो बनते हैं, दैट कैन ऑल्सो बी टेकन केयर ऑफ बाय टैली इटसेल्फ बाय यूजिंग कॉस्ट कैटेगरीज एंड कॉस्ट सेंटर्स इफेक्टिवली। इज दिस क्लियर? ये किसी को, जो लोग फॉलो कर रहे हैं, कोई ये फॉलो कर रहा है, कैन यू जस्ट टाइप इट इन द चैट बॉक्स एज यस? आर यू फॉलोइंग सच काइंड ऑफ accounting system currently?
Yes, we are following it.
Okay, perfect. Anybody else who is following such kind of structure? और कोई ये तरीका नहीं तो कोई अलग तरीका हो तो can you just share if there is any other way in which you are following? और जो लोग नहीं फॉलो कर रहे तो वो, आप कोई शेयर करना चाहेगा कि आप ये कैसे मेंटेन कर रहे हो आपके करंट सिस्टम में? इज इट some other way in Tally itself, or is it being tracked separately on an Excel which is outside the accounting system? I anybody would like to share? आप फॉलो कर रहे हो नहीं कर रहे हो, just write no if you're
Like
not
what we
following.
follow, Doit, is like in income and expenditure, we show
Yeah.
our expenses as program expenses and administrative expenses. These are the major
Okay.
group. Then
Okay.
under program expenses, we have 6 verticals, like say education, skilling,
Right.
legal interpretation, and then strengthening the ecosystem. So these are the broad heads. And under them, we have pointed at this is 1, 2, 3, 4, as you have mentioned it. And under
Right.
each of these, there will be the ledger accounts, rent, salary, consultant, printing and stationery, and so on. Right.
Got it.
Now, as
Yeah.
you said, we also maintaining cost centers, and under cost center, we are maintaining it donor wise. So
Okay.
whatever is our restrictive grants, where they have specified the line items, we put
Correct.
into cost centers.
Right.
Whenever we are
Perfect.
booking expense, then we are linking it to donor and the line item, as you have rightly said.
Right. Right. Yeah. Perfect. Perfect. Yeah. Yes, Shalak has written, we are following cost centers under ERP app and maintaining balance sheet cost center in Tally. Okay, perfect. If you're using some kind of accounting or financial management software other than Tally, I mean, if that is taking care of this kind of mechanism, then of course that is absolutely fine. So there are various ways to track this. Once what we discussed so far is using the existing accounting system and features like cost category and cost centers in Tally. या फिर आप एक्सेल पे अलग से मेंटेन कर सकते हो या फिर आप यू कैन गो फॉर सम काइंड ऑफ सोफिस्टिकेटेड सॉफ्टवेयर लाइक ईआरपी फॉर इम्पैक्ट विच इज अगेन डेवलप्ड बाय आर्या itself which is again taking care of all these aspects in that particular software so that you don't have to create all these mechanisms in Tally. Tally can be used just as an accounting software for preparing balance sheet and income expenditure. Even that is an acceptable approach. Yeah, so there are various ways in which we can do. Um, yes,
Is
thanks,
it
Shalaka,
possible,
for sharing.
is it possible to put the budget amount also in Tally?
See, there is a feature in Tally for using budget, but then for doing that, see, I have personally not used that feature, and even if you have to use, then you have to be very sure of aligning, no, the nomenclatures, the budget and the actuals, the ledger names and everything. Probably, uh, yeah, you need to align those and then track it systematically to really generate reports out of Tally itself. But I've
Hmm.
personally never used that that system in Tally. If anybody has used that that feature, probably if you can share, that would be helpful and great, for everybody here. कोई और है शेयर करना चाहेगा आप किस तरीके से कर रहे हो कोई अच्छा नो हु ऑल आर नॉट फॉलोइंग एनी ऑफ दिस इन टैली एंड जस्ट मेंटेनिंग एवरीथिंग ऑन एक्सेल जब भी डोनर यूसी देने का टाइम आता है यू वर्क आउट ऑन एक्सेल एंड देन क्रिएट दोज रिपोर्ट्स ऐसे कोई ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है यहाँ पे
एक्सेल पे हाँ हम रोहित हम बहुत सारी चीजें एक्सेल पे ही कर रहे हैं
अच्छा
सो मतलब जितनी भी चीजें मेजोरिटी ऑफ चीजें जो एक्सेल पे हो जाती हैं वो
हम्म
सब हम एक्सेल पे ही कर रहे हैं अभी जैसे
गॉट इट लेकिन आप टैली यूज कर रहे हो राइट
क्या
लाइक यू आर यूजिंग टैली इटसेल्फ लेकिन ये जो रिपोर्टिंग पार्ट आता है तो आप
हाँ
एक्सेल
हाँ
पे कर रहे
राइट
हो ओके
यस
ओके गॉट इट या
क्योंकि आई थिंक अब शायद आदत भी हो गई है ना एक वो एक्सेल की चीजें समझ में आ गई ना तो बहुत मे भी स्विच करना
या
थोड़ा सा वो भी लगता है कि यार क्योंकि शायद बता रहे थे शायद अनुराग भी कि टैली पे चीजें हम मतलब कर सकते हैं शायद ना बहुत सारी ये चीजें भी थोड़ा सा डेटा वोटा करके
राइट राइट या उसमें देखो अगर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन छोटा है एट द बिगनिंग प्रॉब्ली दिस इज द बेस्ट दैट यू कैन डू राइट यूजिंग एक्सेल
या
टैली एंड जस्ट मेक इट
हाँ
वर्क but as you grow you will realize somewhere that these are not the efficient techniques or ways of doing work and that's when all these things become very critical when your organization reach that level ki if there are no systems you will just end up in chaos towards the end or probably then the reportings happen on a reactive basis not on proactive basis कि कुछ देने का टाइम आता है तभी compiling all the data compiling all the excel sheets here and there and making some sense out of it जब भी आप ग्रो करोगे तभी कोई कोई डोनर्स के थर्ड पार्टी अपॉइंटेड ऑडिटर्स भी आते हैं टू लुक एट योर बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स राइट then there are certain questions that get asked कि how are you tracking donor funds no show us separate some donors ask for separate books of accounts for their particular grants सो व्हाट दे मीन बाय सेपरेट बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट मतलब उनको सेपरेट ट्रैकिंग चाहिए कि उनके जो
हाँ
एक्सपेंसेस है
राइट
उनके फंड से तो हाउ आर यू ट्रैकिंग सो इफ यू आर adopting such kind of methodologies in the existing financial system itself, it just helps in boosting that confidence for the donor कि it's not just one donor के एक donor के funds आप track कर रहे हो. ऐसे अगर आपके 10 donors भी आते हैं, if you are following such kind of system, it naturally gives that confidence कि 10 donors के तो already track कर रहे हैं लोग properly. There is no double dip or double booking of one expense against two donors and so on and so forth. So it just gives that confidence and it just helps in handling those kind of questions and
राइट।
conversations.
हमारे
Yeah,
केस में दो इतना हमने जो डोनर स्पेसिफिक भी ना एक्सेल शीट ट्रैकर बना रखी है। सो इसमें
okay,
सारी सारी चीजें से आप अभी पूरा शो कर रहे थे ना, तो
right,
ऐसे ही हमने हर डोनर स्पेसिफिक बना रखा है पूरा।
okay,
पर यस मतलब मेरे को बहुत सारी चीजें पता चली कि जो हम चेंजेस इसमें करके और उसको बेटर कर सकते हैं। सो जब
right,
एक ही डोनर्स के थ्रू हम मल्टीपल चीजें बहुत सारी कर रहे हैं, राइट। तो
right, right.
उसको समझने में और फिर यूसेज और बाकी चीजों के लिए ये ना हो कि एंड में, क्योंकि वो ऑटोमेटिकली हमारे पास सारा आ जाएगा एक बारी में खुद ही।
करेक्ट करेक्ट एब्सोल्युटली. एक और नेगेटिव क्या है कि आप एक्सेल पे भी मेंटेन कर रहे हो और अकाउंट्स में मतलब टैली अलग से मेंटेन कर रहे हो, इज दैट एंड में आपको फिर रिकंसिलिएशन करना जरूरी है एट द टाइम ऑफ ऑडिट. Whatever you reports that you have given to the donors, okay, during the year, somewhere they have to tie up also with your financial statements, right, that you prepare at the end of the year. तो इसका एक और चीज वेरी क्रिटिकल दैट यू रिकंसाइल योर, if you're maintaining parallel systems, then it's important to reconcile your financial statements or the main accounting data with the reports that you have already given to the donors.
True.
That also becomes very critical aspect.
We also maintain an Excel sheet for MIS, and like for each donor, there is a separate sheet, and then there is a summary sheet which lists down all the donors and projects and opening, what receipt, total payments, and the closing balance.
Okay, got it. But since you mentioned you're also maintaining cost centers, then I think it will just tie up, right? In
Yeah.
Tally and as well as that Excel.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Then that is perfect. बट अगर आप सिर्फ एक्सेल पे कर रहे हो और टैली में किधर भी नहीं कर रहे हो, तो एटलीस्ट देन टोटल लेवल पे इट शुड मैच एट द एंड. इफ देयर इज अ मिसमैच, देन अगेन इट्स अ रिकंसिलिंग issue that needs to be taken care of. Yeah, Kusum has mentioned they use Excel. They are very new. Even Kiran is using Excel, Alisha. So yeah, I mean, that's how you start, right? When an organization starts, we all start with basic usage of Tally and Excel. The idea of discussing this part in this session is that, as a next level of creating efficiencies in the organizations, this is something that can be explored, that should be explored, in fact. uh, Keeping in mind how the donors will also perceive your accounting systems when it comes to when the organization reaches that level. Yes. और किसी का कोई क्वेश्चन है इसके ऊपर? Else we'll just move on to the last topic for today. Okay, which is cash flows. Okay, again, a very small topic, but very critical from a non-profit perspective. Okay, so shall we begin this topic? Or does anybody need break, 2 minutes break? Or we are good to go? Okay. Okay, perfect. So जब भी हम cash flows की बात करते हैं, so can somebody help me with why do we need to track cash flows in the first place? Why does a non-profit need to track cash flows?
To
What can
know
you
your
think of?
exact cash position.
Okay, okay. Anybody else?
It's a donor's money. So since we are maintaining tally and the other expense, we need to, know the cash where it's going to track the expenses and the money.
Okay, okay. Right. और कोई है? Wants to share? Okay, so typical questions that get asked even by the senior management sometimes within an NGO to the accounts team. कि how much cash do we have in order to sustain, in order to survive, till when will our cash last, कि currently तो बैंक अकाउंट में तो पैसा है, लेकिन कितने टाइम तक वो चलेगा, when will we run out of cash. Okay, there are these also some questions like what are the when is the next tranche going to be received from the donor, or some kind of commitments, payments that we need to make, tracking those payables as well as receivables. Also ग्रांट यूटिलाइजेशन, राइट, डोनर यूटिलाइजेशन, हम डोनर का पैसा तो आ गया लेकिन हम कैसे उसको यूज कर रहे हैं, कैसे प्लान कर रहे हैं, कभी शॉर्टेज आएगा, कभी अगर हम ट्रैक नहीं कर रहे तो एट द एंड ऑफ द पीरियड इफ यू आर नॉट एबल टू यूटिलाइज द एंटायर मनी, इवन दैट बिकम्स अ चैलेंज फॉर द नॉन प्रॉफिट. सो दीज आर टिपिकल रीजंस why we need to track cash flows. Okay, Chalaga, you have mentioned to know surplus or deficit. So if you recollect our session number 2, see, surplus or deficit is we get to know only from income and expenditure statement, not from cash flow. ओके, रिसीट्स एंड पेमेंट्स या कैश फ्लो से हमको सरप्लस और डेफिसिट नहीं समझेगा. हाँ, अगर आप सरप्लस और डेफिसिट डोनर स्पेसिफिक बात कर रहे हो व्हेन इट कम्स टू अंडर यूटिलाइजेशन और मे बी ओवर यूटिलाइजेशन फ्रॉम द बजट पार्ट, yes, for that this will be helpful, but from an organization surplus or deficit, cash flow is not the right method. Yeah, I think you are referring to the donor specific. ठीक है. Okay, so what are the types of cash flow reporting? There are two types of methods. कोई बता पाएगा what are these methods for reporting cash flows? आई थिंक हमने इसको ब्रीफली कुछ डिस्कस भी किया था सेशन 1 या 2 में. किसी को याद है? What are the two methods or types of cash flow reporting?
Direct and indirect.
Correct, yeah. So there are two methods. One is direct method and one is indirect method. So direct method is very straightforward and very simple and very effective and commonly used by all the non-profits. It just shows actual cash received and actual cash paid during the year. Okay, typically we start with opening cash balance, cash and bank balance, add all the receipts that we received during the year, less payments, and we will arrive at the closing cash. Okay, this is the very direct, straightforward method of tracking cash flows. There is another method called indirect method, which is by calculating or making some adjustments to surplus and deficit or deficit from income and expenditure, and then making some kind of adjustments to that surplus or deficit, like increase in current assets, decrease in current assets, increase in current liabilities, decrease in current liabilities compared to last year, and so on. There is a little complicated. अब अगर कंपनी लॉ के अंडर देखोगे, देर इज अ फॉर्मेट ऑफ कैश फ्लो रिपोर्टिंग, राइट, इन एडिशन टू इनकम एक्सपेंडिचर एंड बैलेंस शीट. तो उसमें वो मैंडेटरी होता है फॉर सर्टन ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस टू रिपोर्ट कैश फ्लोज एज पर इनडायरेक्ट मेथड. लेकिन दैट इज क्रिएटेड for typically useful for profit entities, but when it comes to non-profit it is not so effective. Okay, so we will talk about direct method, which is relevant for non-profits, by using an example as well subsequently. Okay, कोई questions है किसी के अब तक? Okay, so there are certain like preparation tips that we need to be mindful of. कि हम जब भी कैश फ्लो बनाते हैं, हमारे जो बेस अजम्पशंस है शुड बी रियलिस्टिक. ओके, पेमेंट टर्म्स और ग्रांट जो जो अग्रीमेंट के तहत जो अग्री हुए विद द डोनर्स, फॉर डिसबर्समेंट ऑफ फंड्स, या फिर कोई वेंडर के जो पेमेंट टर्म्स अग्री हुए, ऑल दीज टर्म्स एंड कंडीशंस नीड्स टू बी ऑल्सो अकाउंटेड फॉर मंथ वाइज, और स्पेसिफिकली कि कौन से मंथ में वो जो भी ड्यू है, दैट ऑल्सो नीड्स टू बी कैप्चर्ड करेक्टली इन योर कैश फ्लो स्टेटमेंट. कोई एक्सपेंसेस ऐसे होते हैं कि वन टाइम एक्सपेंस रहते हैं, you don't need to pay it every month, but just one time expense for the entire year, right? So even those particular expenses need to be captured correctly in the correct month when you're preparing and tracking cash flows on monthly basis. ऐसे नहीं कि just divide by 12 किया गया, so at the beginning of the year you have estimated say 12 lakh rupees to be spent towards insurance example. So no, it's not that you just divide 12 lakh rupees divide by 12. So 1 lakh rupees cash outflow every month. That is a wrong way of preparing cash flow. जब भी 12 लाख रुपीस ड्यू है वो मंथ में जाके आपको you have to report or park it when you are preparing cash flow statement. Okay. And very one important point is that जब भी आप कैश फ्लो बनाते हो आप कैश फ्लो किसी भी दिन बना सकते हो by taking the actuals up to the date on which you are preparing. Like even today, if you decide to make cash flow for your organization even today, 11th March, you will have to take opening cash balances as of today. Okay, cash and bank balances, and then you can project for the future period up to say 31st March. Of course, when you prepare cash flow, again, there has to be some kind of cutoff. Typically, we use financial year as the cutoff. Uh, so yeah, so it is actuals up to this date, up to the date on you which you prepare, and then projections for the future period up to say 31st March. This is very important from and very unique to when you talk about cash flows. क्योंकि अब तक तो जो कैश स्पेंड हुआ है जो रिसीव हुआ है वो तो हमारे पास एक्चुअल डेटा है राइट वी डोंट हैव टू रिलाई ऑन प्रोजेक्शंस प्रोजेक्शंस तो फ्यूचर के बनते हैं सो व्हेन वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट कैश फ्लोज till the date you are preparing cash flow you have to take actuals and only for the future period you have to rely on projections. Okay, all are with me so far? We'll just check a couple of cash flow templates. Okay, ये templates लिए गए हैं again from couple of organizations who are using these templates. Okay, where we have only helped prepare because cash flow is something very subjective. Okay, हर एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के रिक्वायरमेंट्स के हिसाब से कैश फ्लो बन सकता है. No, typically as per the requirements of the organization, cash flows can be prepared. So there are a couple of examples that I would want to show. I'll just give you a context also कि ये organization cash flow क्यों track कर रहे हैं in the way in which they are maintaining. Okay, so let's look at this first template. Okay, again both ये direct method ही use कर रहे हैं, opening, add, less, closing. Okay, बट इनका पर्पस ये था कि उनको देखना था कि उनके मल्टीपल बैंक अकाउंट्स थे. ओके, एफसीआरए बैंक अकाउंट, नॉन एफसीआरए बैंक अकाउंट, प्लस दो डोनर्स ऐसे भी थे कि उनके डोनर का अलग से बैंक अकाउंट था. सो दे वांटेड टू ट्रैक कैश फ्लो फॉर ईच ऑफ द बैंक अकाउंट्स. ओके, एंड नो कि व्हेन विल दे रन आउट ऑफ कैश in that bank account. That is what their objective was when they talked about cash flows. तो इनके केस में कैश फ्लो भी वैसे फिर कस्टमाइज किया गया था टू कैप्चर और टू गिव दिस काइंड ऑफ आंसर्स. Fundamentals remain same. Okay, we start with capturing the opening balances first. So in this example 27 July 2025 को कैश फ्लो बनाने को they wanted to check the cash flow. So as of that day what are the opening balances? Okay, in each of the bank accounts. उसमें FDs no, they had FDs also in each of the bank accounts. So all the amounts would get plotted in the opening balance itself. Then there will be, after you capture all the opening balances like you see in row number 12, then there is cash outflows, right? Future cash outflows from 28th July, from the next day till 31st March, जो भी projected cash outflows है towards each of the expense from each of the bank accounts, they would plot in each of the bank accounts. That will give them the total cash outflow projected up to 31st March. Then what is the projected cash inflows from 20th July to 31st March? That would get plotted. Okay, so total of all the cash inflows as well, which will then eventually give, total of cash inflows in row number 40. And then row number 42 is the closing cash balance, right? Opening, add कितना estimated है inflow, less कितना estimated है payments. That would give them the estimated closing balance as on 31st March. Okay, अभी ये होने के बाद how they would look at is that what is the per month average burn rate from each of the bank accounts. Okay, so suppose from non-FCRA bank account the average burn rate is 2 lakh rupees. Okay, and the estimated closing balance as on 31st March is 9 lakh 30. So the organization can survive for 5 months for this bank account, for specifically for this bank, because they wanted this data to be captured on bank level, at the bank level. So this would give them the idea कि 5 मार्च के बाद 5 महीने तक हम सर्वाइव कर सकते हैं based on the cash that is available as on 31st March. Okay, so sitting in the month of July, so next year के जुलाई तक they would be able to survive with the projected cash flows up to 31st March. Similarly, FCRA account में भी whatever is the closing bank balance as on estimated bank balance on 31st March, उसके बाद divided by the average burn rate from that particular bank account, that would give them an estimate of how much they would survive for the subsequent to 31st March, कितने month तक वो survive कर सकते हैं based on the cash flow projections. Similarly for donor, donor 1 and donor 2. Okay, so this is one way to track cash flow with, again, we need to look at the objective through which we are trying to find answers by preparing this cash flows and tracking of cash flows. Okay, there is one more example. Any questions so far on this template? किसी को कोई doubts है? Okay, so we'll discuss this second template as well. इसमें ये ऑर्गेनाइजेशन हर एक मंथ उनको ट्रैकिंग चाहिए कि हमारे हर एक मंथ दे वांट टू ट्रैक फॉर व्हाट विल बी द कैश पोजीशन फॉर ईच ऑफ द बैंक अकाउंट्स. तो इनका स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड है. अप्रैल मंथ में दे स्टार्ट विद ऑल द ओपनिंग बैलेंसेस. वो मंथ में जो भी इनफ्लोज एक्सपेक्टेड है, जो भी एक्सपेंसेस एक्सपेक्टेड है, दे प्लॉटेड एंड देन दे गेट क्लोजिंग बैलेंस, एक्सपेक्टेड क्लोजिंग बैलेंस फॉर दैट पर्टिकुलर मंथ, विच विल बिकम द ओपनिंग बैलेंस ऑफ द नेक्स्ट मंथ. Okay, so April month का closing 4,98 will become May month का opening balance. Same way, next month के लिए whatever is projected inflows, projected outflows, they will get a closing balance which will become opening balance of the subsequent month, and so on and so forth. So like I discussed, if we are sitting on the month of July, then April में जून जुलाई तक तो हमारे पास actual figures आ ही गए रहेंगे from bank statement. हमको subsequent period का projections करने पड़ेंगे, if you are using such kind of approach in cash flows. So this is how they were tracking their cash flows. Okay, ये जो expenses है उसके आप detail level पे आप वो भी capture कर सकते हो ना, what are the types of expenses that you anticipate to be spent in the subsequent months. Okay, this is another template that was in use. किसी को कोई questions है इस template पे भी? There is no one size fits all when it comes to cash flow. It is unique for each of the organization. It also depends on what is the objective of preparing cash flow or tracking cash flows, right? कोई कोई आप में से कोई कैश फ्लोज बनाता है, कोई ट्रैक करता है मंथ ऑन मंथ और क्वार्टरली बेसिस पे? ओके.
यस, मंथली बेसिस पे.
ओके,
Yes.
तो
Every
yes,
2 months prepare.
अच्छा, परफेक्ट या यही तरीके से बनता है या कोई और तरीके से बनता है, या बेस यही है, कुछ थोड़े मॉडिफिकेशंस है?
Based
मंथली.
to yes, here and there are some more modifications.
ओके. ओके, सेम फॉर अंकुश.
या मंथली.
ओके, मंथली, परफेक्ट. Yes. Yes. So this brings an end to the topics that we wanted to cover for today. किसी का कोई questions है, किसी के doubts कुछ discuss करना चाहेगा before we move on to our last part, which is a short quiz that we do in every session. Anybody has any questions? किसी को कुछ कोई share करना चाहेगा? Okay, if there are no questions, then we'll move on to our quiz time. So I hope everybody by now knows their teams, right? Team 1, team 2, team 3. So we'll begin with first question for team 1. Okay. So first question is, allocation of shared costs while preparing budget is required mainly for what? Audit, true cost computation, tax filing, or cash flow? Team
True
1,
cost computation.
perfect.
B.
Perfect. Yes. Team 2, salary cost allocation across projects is best based on which ratio for budget preparation? Employee count, grant size, office area, or time spent? Salary cost allocation across projects is best. Again, what is the best approach when it comes to salary allocations?
Time spent.
Yes, yes, that's right. That's right. Team 3, which report helps management monitor financial metrics out of below? कौन से रिपोर्ट से मैनेजमेंट फाइनेंशियल मेट्रिक्स उनके लिए देख सकते हैं नो कैन मॉनिटर ट्रायल बैलेंस रिसीट्स एंड पेमेंट्स मैनेजमेंट और एमआईएस रिपोर्ट और ऑडिट रिपोर्ट
MIS report.
MIS
करेक्ट
report.
perfect again coming to team 1 an organization prepares a budget assuming full grant utilization but the donor releases funds in tranches during the year. Okay, which report becomes most critical for monitoring operations? ओके बजट बना दिया पूरे साल के यूटिलाइजेशन के एस्टिमेट पे लेकिन डोनर ट्रांचेस में रिलीज करता है सो विच ऑफ द बिलो रिपोर्ट्स बिकम्स मोस्ट क्रिटिकल ट्रायल बैलेंस कैश फ्लो ट्रैकर बैलेंस शीट और बजट वर्सेस एक्चुअल्स
Team 1, I think budget versus actuals, but somebody else from team 1, please confirm.
टीम 1 थिंक
Cash flow tracker.
ओके Rani has mentioned D. Kusum has also mentioned D, but there is somebody who is saying cash flow tracker. What is the consensus? What is the final answer?
Let's go with the majority. Two of us said budget versus actual.
Okay. Okay, that's the wrong answer. Cash flow tracker is the right answer.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, because if you see this question again at the beginning, budget is prepared, but पैसा अगर आया ही नहीं है, तो how will you even like track, right? I mean, the best way to monitor this would be cash flow tracker by using cash flow tracker, not budget versus actuals. Anyway, question two for team two. An NPO wants to allocate shared administrative expenses using the program expense ratio. Okay, how is this ratio calculated? There are four options. Specific program expenses divided by total of all program expenses. या फिर उसका उल्टा total of program expenses divided by specific program expenses. Administrative expenses divided by specific program expenses or program income versus total income divided by total income. Team 2.
A.
Sorry, you mentioned A, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the final answer, right?
Yeah. If others are not coming.
Yes, that's the right answer. That's the right answer. It's specific program divided by the total program expenses. That's how you calculate total program expense ratio. Okay, last question for team 3. Which of the following is a shared expense in an NPO? Training material for specific project, field travel for program A, office rent used by all programs, specific project specific consultant fee.
C. Office rent used by all program.
Yes, yes, that's right. Perfect. Thank you everyone for the participation. I hope this session was useful. If you can just share your insights, was it useful, was it not useful, was there something new that came across, or probably you would be already practicing certain things that we discussed, but maybe कोई और ideas share हुए हो which you found useful. Can somebody just share your thoughts?
Yeah, though that was very useful thing because you mentioned that tally say we can know that our budget actual and we can find out the variance as well from the tally itself. So this I mean, I really want to start if it's easy and effective way of doing and using tele. So that was a very insightful thing for me.
Right. Perfect. Thanks. और कोई शेयर करना चाहेगा?
Yeah, for me also the cost allocation thing was very new because since our NGO is also very new, so tally we just pack all the expenses in total, income total, expenses total. So from now on, since the new year is beginning shortly, so I'll try and maintain the way you said. So maybe in the long run, when the organization will grow, it will be helpful.
Right. Perfect. Absolutely. Thanks, Alisha, for sharing.
In
और
fact,
कोई है?
yeah, I'll do it. In fact, we use, as I told you, income expenditure program wise, so allocate the ledger accounts and expenses wise. But now that you showed us, so I'll also try to include the location and then use pivot tables to consolidate it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There are various permutation combinations that can be used.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Thanks for sharing, Anurag. Anybody else? Okay. So yeah, over to you, Ravi. Yeah, just before that, assessments, would request again that everybody fills up the assessments in time. We'll be sharing assessment for this session as well, today or tomorrow. Would request everybody if they can fill before Monday so that we also get some time to go through the responses, before the session. That would be really helpful. Thank you everyone again.
Thank you.
Over to you, Ravi.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for joining. We will see you all next week. That'll be session 5. And if you have missed anything, please watch it on YouTube. Also, I will mention like and subscribe our channels.
Sure.
But yes, look forward to having all of you soon. Please continue the engagement on the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.